So we're learning, we're learning an idea. A Yid is protesting his ruchniistic struggles, his spiritual struggles. And the spiritual struggles that he's having are such that they're depressing him. They're putting him into a bad mood, which is a really terrible way to serve the Eibishter. You cannot serve the Eibishter when you're in a rotten mood. It's just impossible. So he comes to Alter Rebbe and he complains, and he explains to the Alter Rebbe what the struggle is. And as I've explained it to you, is the technical language of the Pedic is, quote, he gets bad thoughts during davening. That's the language of the Pedic. He gets bad thoughts during davening. What does it mean? No, I'm sorry. He gets bad thoughts all day long. Davening is the next Pedic. He gets bad thoughts all day long. Now watch when someone like you and me, I shouldn't say you and me because I don't know you, but me and me, yeah? When I get a bad thought, what's the answer to that bad thought? You're a normal person. You have a Yetzer Hara. You're going to get bad thoughts. The important thing is not to entertain them. This person is frustrated by them. This person feels that considering how hard he works in Avodas Hashem, each time such a thought crosses his awareness, it's an indication of that his avodah is really, it's going no place. He just feels so unaccomplished because the bad thought is so inconsistent with where he is as a servant of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that it depresses him. And Alter Rebbe told him off at first, but then Alter Rebbe told him something else. And what Alter Rebbe told him, if I had to put it in other words, is you have a major mistake in your thinking. And the major mistake in your thinking is that when the Eibishter created the world, he created the world that every human being should become a tzaddik. And that's not true. The Eibishter created the world for some people to become tzaddikim, and for the rest of us, for the struggle, for the duration of our lives, and that our ceiling, our maximum is madregas beinani. Beinani means he's always fighting, she's always fighting, but he always wins. If you look at the reality from the first point of view that everybody's meant to become a tzaddik, of course you're going to be disappointed. But if you understand that the Eibishter never planned for everybody to be tzaddik, and as we learned in last week's class, that the Yitzchak Hashem tells Knesset Yisrael, there's two types of food that I like. I like food which is naturally tasty and sweet, which is Avodas HaTzadikim, and I like food which is naturally sharp and sour, which is prepared, that's made pleasant, and this is Avodas HaBeinani. So Alter Rebbe says to the Beinani, your mistake is you see yourself as a half a tzaddik. A half a tzaddik is a failure. You're not a half a tzaddik, you're a complete Beinani. This is what Eibishter made you to be. Perhaps Hashem made you, to be my entire life in this state of Milchama. This is what the Alter Rebbe tells. And then he adds, you have to, a little bit, judge your life by the Eibishter's rubric, by the Eibishter's measure. Not by yours, by the Eibishter's. And you should know. The Eibishter says, B'chol d'chiyah d'chiyah, when a Beinani, when a person like me, when an average person, when a non-tzaddik fights with his Yetzer Hara and pushes Yetzer Hara out, and he comes back again, and he pushes him out again, comes back again, and he pushes him out again. Each time he pushes him out, the nachas ruach he gives the Eibishter is greater. The Alter Rebbe doesn't say it in these words, but it's very clear. It's a zoyar, it's a quote, it's a direct quote from Zohar. It's greater than the nachas ruach the Eibishter gets from the tzaddik. So you may not like yourself so much, but he does. The Eibishter looks at the struggle. I once sat at a fabrenga of Rabbi Leibel Groner, Olav Shalom. It's just so hard to think about how many times you say Olav Shalom as a chen of these days. He came to fabrenga in yeshiva, and he fabrenga. I have a recording of it someplace. I should collect these. They're so special. I'm sure there's hundreds of fabrenga of Rabbi Groner, but there's a few that I have recordings of. And Fashid didn't mention that came into the yeshiva. I always was recording everything, and I saved things. I have to just find them and disseminate them. So he told a story. When he was a bach in yeshiva, one of the influences they had was a yid by the name of Avram Parish. Rabbi Avram Paris. Avram Parish, that was his name. His family was in Israel, he was in America. He came to America to try to make a living. Then the war started and he got stuck here. And then the Rebbe came and he got stuck here doubly, between the war and his inability to go home and the Rebbe's desire to stay here. So his wife basically raised the kids for quite a few. They were already big, they were not little. His children were grown up sort of when he came here. But he was away from his family for maybe 8 or 9 years. And the Frierdiker finally said, okay, enough, get him. Frierdiker sent him home. And he wouldn't see the Rebbe for 16 years after that. No, for 12 or 13 years after that. He came to the Rebbe in Tufshin Chofal for 1960. It was the first time he saw the Rebbe. When he was in New York, there's a lady who came to this class. I love to repeat this. Her name is Mrs. Goldman. Mrs. Goldman is over 39, twice and a half. She's Achei Simpson's daughter. She's the youngest of the Simpsons. She got married in 1954. So das heißt, 70 Jahre. This year, they're on the 11 line. They're both alive and well. 70 years. That's a kunst. Das darf man kennen. So she came to these classes. And sometimes she came with her sisters. Sometimes Mrs. Roosevelt came, and sometimes even Mrs. Gordon came. I remember once the three of them were sitting here. We had some very nice ladies coming to these classes. Everybody here is beautiful and wonderful, but people that are older than I am and older than my mother, it was a special thing. So they had published a book about her father, Rabbi Simpson, and I was reading it. So I repeated, and the three sisters were sitting here that Sunday. So I repeated it to her, as a compliment to her father. What did I say? That in the biography of her father was a very, very big chassid. In Lubavitch, he was a big chassid. In Lubavitch, he was a Achei Temimim. He was an unusual man. But he never opened his mouth. You looked at him, you saw beauty. He was azah shenkite. You could watch the videos of him standing behind the Rebbe. He always looked beautiful. But he didn't open his mouth. He didn't talk. Nicht geredet. He was a shaisik. He was the Frierdiker Rebbe's machzor. He stood in the room with the Frierdiker Rebbe for 10 years interpreting. He heard everybody's personal business. You went to Frierdiker Rebbe for Yechidus, he went in with you to interpret. He knew everybody's stories. And the minute he walked out, he didn't repeat it, he forgot it. When the Rebbe became Rebbe, he hired his son, who is now also Oliver Shalom Mendel. And he said, I'm hiring you because I'm assuming that you have some of your father's genes. Your father's a shoisek, I'm hoping you'll also be quiet. And we didn't even know he worked for the Rebbe for decades. He was out of mind, out of sight, out of mind. Rabbi Simpson. But in any case, this was the father and the son. So in this book, the Frierdiker Rebbe said to somebody, if you want an example from chinuch habanis in America, darf sich lernen from Rabbi Simpson. Rabbi Simpson came to America in 1926, I think. That means his children were either born here, or they came here when they're very little. They grew up, they were Americans. In an America that every from Yid in Europe is called the Treif in Medina, the prohibited land. My great grandfather, my mother's father's father, went back to Europe to learn. He went back to Europe from America to learn, and they wouldn't talk to him. He was the Amerikaner Chazefreser. You know what that means? There was such a disdain. He was the American Chazefreser. I trust Chazefreser in English. It's so disrespectful. And he was Maisa Nefesh. They didn't understand what America was. You know what it meant that his parents sent him back to Europe? They were poor people. Just putting him on a ship and sending him home, and they wouldn't talk to him. But to raise a mishpacha with so many and so many sons and so many daughters in that world, and they should, first of all, that they're all frum is a ness. And Chassidische Yidden and Shluchim, it's unbelievable. So the Frierdiker Rebbe told somebody, if you want to learn how to raise Chassidische daughters in America, you should learn from Rabbi Simpson. So I repeated this to her to make her feel good. Then her two sisters were sitting there like that Sunday, and she blurts out, "What? It wasn't my father. It was Rabbi Avraham Paris." She says to me without a hesitation, "It was my father." He didn't talk to them either. He didn't talk to nobody. I wonder if he talked to his wife. The man opened his mouth. It wasn't my father. Avraham Paris lived in, I don't know where he lived. He would go to Borough Park. He would go into that house and start playing with the girls. He was a smart chassid. He was a very smart chassid. His children were not here, unfortunately. He was stuck in America. So he was makar of the American boys and girls. They all have such incredible memories of him. He was a very, very warm chassid. He wasn't a big brain chassid. He was an incredibly hard chassid. And he verbringed with the bacher, he verbringed with the girls. So she says to me, "It wasn't my father." I can hear that New Brooklyn accent. Wow. It wasn't my father. It was the Avraham Paris. He came to Borough Park and he sat down with the girls and he verbringed with them. Anyway, so Rabbi Labelgroner told us that if I bring in, that Avraham Parish will bring one for the Bacham 770. And he said to them that if a person does a skafia for 59 minutes, you're something you shouldn't do, whether you don't need to do. And for 59 minutes you control yourself, and after 59 minutes you give in and you indulge. Hast du gebravet 59 Minuten skafia? He says, you're not a failure. For 59 minutes you succeeded. This is what he told them. It's not that you failed for 59 minutes. Now, it doesn't feel that way. It doesn't feel that way at all. But this is what the Alter Rebbe is saying. Instead of putting yourself down, appreciate the Eibishter knows. You know the story that I always tell you? It's a moedendik mais. I tell you always the same story. I heard this my Rabbi Reuben Zochem from the police station, Beis Rivka, that the Pinchas Koretzer, who was one of the great Talmidim of the Baal Shem Tov, the Baal Shem Tov had a Talmud whose family name was Babad, Beis Dal. He told me the first name, but I don't remember it. He was a big Gon, he was a big Chassid, he was a big Ovid, and he was a Yisurim Neiram. He had a lot of tzaddas. And his life was very hard. And you know how life gets hard? There are acute hardships. Something happens that's very, very painful, that's quick. But then you have chronic hardships. The stuff that you just live your whole life with. And they exhaust you. They matter and they suck your life out. They just go on and they go on. And this babad upon him, the Hebrew word for that is tirdo, not tircho, tirdo. It means oisgematet. It takes your life away. So this babad was about Yisurim. And for a moment, it crossed his mind, is it possible that Eibishter doesn't know how hard his life is? Does Hashem not know? But as soon as he thought that thought, he realized that it was a wrong thought. So what do you do when you're a tzaddik like him in your bad thought? You run away to the Rebbe. So he got into his wagon and he found Kakoritz. He went to the Pinchas Koretz. Pinchas Koretz was Badreges Tzaddik Gomer. He was a Talmud of the Baal Shem Tov. So he rode into the courtyard and he passed by the house and he was going to stable the horse. You know, we don't even understand what this means. You have to stable the horse, disconnect the horse from the wagon. The wagon goes in one place, the horse goes in another place. The horse, you know, you got to give him water and you give him hay and you got to look after them. As he passes by the window of the Pinchas Koretz, the window opens. And the Pinchas Koretz pokes out his head and he says to him in Galician Yiddish, As ich weiß nicht der Rebbeinu Shalom. If I know, you think God doesn't know? So he drove around the house and went straight back home. He didn't even stop. He got his answer. As ich weiß, if I know, you think the Eibishter doesn't know? The Eibishter doesn't know? The Eibishter doesn't know? So that's what the Alter Rebbe is saying. The Eibishter doesn't know your hardships. The Eibishter created some people, which is actually most people in our generations, the vast majority of us, to struggle as Jews, and we're not perfect. But you don't quit. And you try your best, and you should know every victory, every little dechiyah, every little, you're fighting a war which is made up of many battles. Every battle to the Eibishter is a tachlis, is an end, and it's a victory, and it's a success. And this is what the Alter Rebbe is saying to this chassid. In addition to putting him in his place about his unrealistic sense of self, he says to him, I want you to know, you may not like yourself, but the Eibishter loves you. And in many ways, you're doing something for him, which is more than what the tzaddik is doing.